The last light. There's nothing as beautiful as the last rays of sunlight fading over the ocean horizon, he thought. The water around him was calm now, the storm that had torn his boat apart hours earlier having long since passed. The wind had settled, and the waves, though still rolling gently beneath him, no longer felt threatening. The sun was low on the horizon, casting an orange glow across the endless expanse of water, painting the sky in hues of red and purple. He floated on his back, the salt water stinging his lips, his body aching with exhaustion, but for a moment he allowed himself to be still. The beauty of the scene was overwhelming. He'd always heard people talk about the ocean's majesty, but until now he had never understood it in such a visceral way. It was as if the ocean itself was alive, breathing, holding him in its grasp. He didn't have the strength to swim anymore, but there was no need. The sea was carrying him, if only for a little while. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the warm glow of the setting sun bathe his face, the last vestige of daylight on his skin. In his mind, he was still back on the boat, steering it with determination, fighting against the winds, believing he could make it through the storm. But now the boat was gone, and he was alone, stranded in the vastness of the ocean. But even as the sun dipped lower, he thought, "This is beautiful." It was a fleeting beauty, something fragile, something that could disappear in an instant. He knew that the night would come soon, bringing with it a cold and a darkness that would swallow the last warmth the sun had left behind. The rhythmic blinking of the strobe light on his life vest was the only sound now, pulsing in the silence, the only thing that reminded him of the fight he had left. It was his beacon of hope, a tiny flash of light in the vast, empty dark of the sea. But how far could it reach? How long before the batteries drained, leaving him with nothing but the blackness? He didn't know how long he'd been floating. Hours? Maybe more? The pain in his arms and legs had long since faded into a dull ache, a reminder of the struggle he'd endured. He had tried to stay afloat when the storm had hit, clinging to the debris of the wreckage. But eventually the pieces of the boat had slipped away, and he had been left alone in the open water. His throat was dry, the salt water choking him with every breath he took. But still he floated, his body moving gently with the rhythm of the waves. It was as if he had become part of the ocean itself, an extension of it, nothing more than a speck in the great expanse. He wondered if anyone would find him, if anyone even knew he was missing. The boat had been a small fishing vessel, and there hadn't been anyone else aboard when the storm hit. His mind flashed to his family, to his home, to everything he had left behind. He had taken risks, sure, but he had never imagined something like this happening. Never imagined he would be here, alone in the vast ocean, watching the sun die as the night began to rise. A slight tremor ran through his body as the strobe on his life vest blinked again. He tried to raise his hand, to wave it, to send some kind of signal, but his body was too weak. His hand fell back into the water, splashing uselessly. As the last of the sun's rays faded into the horizon, a strange calm washed over him. The sky above him was now a deep indigo, the stars beginning to pierce the darkness. It was beautiful in its own way, the kind of beauty that comes only with the knowledge of how fleeting everything truly is. He had heard once, in a story or maybe a poem, that the ocean was a great and terrible thing, that it could both give life and take it away. In his mind, the ocean was both his savior and his executioner. And in that moment, as he floated on its surface, he could feel the weight of that duality pressing in on him. A part of him wanted to fight, wanted to struggle, to scream, to hope for some miracle. But the other part, tired, numb, broken, knew better. There would be no rescue tonight, no lifeline, no helping hand. The strobe light blinked again, and then there was only the sound of the waves and the distant cry of a seabird. The night was quiet, save for the rhythmic motion of the ocean and the beating of his heart, growing slower, more erratic. And as the darkness enveloped him, he closed his eyes, letting the peace of the sea take him, knowing that this brief, beautiful moment was all he had left.